The Community Rating System 400 series outlines activities and elements in mapping and regulations. For more information regarding specifics of points calculation, please consult the current CRS User's Manual. The activities in the 400 series mapping and regulations include 400 Mapping and Regulations, 410 Floodplain Mapping, 420 Open Space Preservation, 430 Higher Regulatory Standards, 440 Flood Data Maintenance, and 450 Stormwater Management. FEMA and many communities have long recognized that the mapping and regulatory standards of the NFIP do not adequately address all of the flood problem. There are many special localized situations in which flooding or flood-related problems do not fit the national norm for riverine and coastal floodplain management. Therefore, there are situations in which the minimum NFIP requirements do not adequately protect property from flood damage. To encourage communities to address these hazards, the CRS provides credit through the CRS Coordinator's Manual for mapping, preserving open space, and regulating new development in areas subject to 5 special flood-related hazards: uncertain flow paths, closed basin lakes, ice jams, land subsidence, and mudflow hazards. Section 410 Floodplain Mapping Elements. Development regulations need thorough and accurate mapping of special flood hazard areas and related flood hazard data. Most firms have detailed data, but some communities still have flood problem areas for which detailed data were not provided by FEMA. As a result, new development in those areas is often not well protected from flood damage. Other communities have data not shown on their firm, want to prepare new maps for unmapped areas or to a higher standard, or want to replace maps that no longer show the current hazard. This activity encourages these communities to prepare new maps and/or enter into cooperative mapping agreements with FEMA for the production of new maps. Flood hazard areas that were not mapped as special flood hazard areas during the preparation of the community's firm have no floodplain management requirements under the NFIP. Additional mapping may have been prepared by or for the community for several reasons. New delineations were necessary because conditions changed since the flood insurance study was done, or the community wanted to regulate areas that were not mapped by FEMA because they did not meet the NFIP mapping criteria, such as the drainage area was less than 1 square mile, or areas that may or may not have been mapped as part of the flood insurance study have hazards that were not adequately mapped, such as alluvial fans or areas subject to subsidence. The regulation at 44 CFR 65.3 requires a community to submit a letter of map revision anytime it undertakes or permits a project that changes the limits of the special flood hazard area, the base flood elevations, or the floodway limits. Section 412 floodplain mapping points are available for new flood studies that produce base flood elevations or floodways. The total credit varies according to 2 factors: the study scope and the previous flood zone as shown on the community's firm in effect at the time the new study was adopted. The points for new study are multiplied by a ratio that reflects how much of the study was financed by non-federal emergency management agency funds, called leverage. Points are available for flood studies reviewed and approved by a state or regional agency. Under state review, a study receives additional credit when an independent quality assurance review, typically by a state agency as required by a state law, has been completed. Higher study standards points are available if the new study was done to 1 or more standards higher than the FEMA mapping criteria. HSS credits the use of study standards higher than those required by FEMA at the time of the study. HSS credit is provided for the following higher study standards: using a factor of safety when calculating the 100-year discharge, using better topographic data, using future conditions hydrology, including sea level rise, and showing 500-year flood elevations and the boundaries of the 500-year floodplain. More restrictive floodway standard points are available based on the allowable floodway surcharge used in the study. Many times, a floodway study prepared according to the minimum NFIP guidelines produces a floodway surcharge of less than 1 foot at some cross sections. The fact that the average floodway surcharge is less than 1 foot does not qualify the community for FWS credit. Floodplain mapping of special flood-related hazards points are available if the community maps and regulates areas of special flood-related hazards. This credit is provided for mapping and regulating any of the special flood-related hazards listed in Section 401. Up to 132 points are available if the community, appropriate regional agency, or state has a signed, qualifying, cooperating technical partner agreement with FEMA. Floods are natural processes, and floodplains are necessary to every river and coastal system. A floodplain has been defined as any land susceptible to being inundated by floodwaters. Floodplains can also be regarded as the land needed by a river or stream to convey and store floodwaters. Preserving the floodplain as open space allows it to serve these primary natural functions and many other important functions. Keeping the floodplain free of development, free of buildings and infrastructure, means that there will be no flood insurance claims, no closed businesses, no homeless residents, and that the community can return to normal quickly after flooding occurs. The purposes of the open space preservation activity are: prevent flood damage by keeping flood-prone lands free of development, and protect and enhance the natural functions of floodplain. Points are available for keeping land vacant through ownership or regulation. These credits preserve open space in the floodplain. Points are also available for legal restrictions that ensure that parcels credited for open space preservation will never be developed. This element provides additional credit for areas of the regulatory floodplain that have the assurance that the parcel will always remain open, a deed restriction. Additional points of extra credit for open space preservation credited parcels that are preserved in or restored to their natural state are given for natural functions of open space. Special flood-related hazards open space credits are available if the OPS credited parcels are subject to one of the special flood-related hazard, or if areas of special flood-related hazard are covered by low-density zoning regulations. Open space incentives credit is provided for local requirements and incentives that keep flood-prone portions of new development open. Most communities have underdeveloped areas that are not preserved as open space through one of the means recognized under open space preservation. Low-density zoning credits are available for zoning districts that require lot sizes of 5 acres or larger. Although the NFIP minimum standards provide a great deal of flood protection, damage can still result for many reasons. Estimates of flood heights are subject to various errors and may be low, especially in areas without long-term flood and rainfall records. Buildings may be damaged by floods that exceed the predicted 100-year flood. Urbanization and other changes in the watershed can increase the flood hazard and flood frequency. Filling and other development in the floodplain can reduce storage and conveyance capacity, and filling and construction practices can damage or destroy valuable natural floodplain functions. For these reasons and the fact that local situations vary, many communities adopt development standards that are higher than or supplement the minimum NFIP criteria. Credits can be earned for development limitations that include prohibiting fill, buildings, and/or storage of materials in the special flood hazard area. Credits can also be earned for enacting a freeboard requirement. For engineered foundations to protect against differential settling as well as scour and erosion, foundation protection credits are available. Cumulative substantial improvements credits are for counting improvement cumulatively. CSI provides credit to a community that ensures that the total value of all improvements or repairs permitted over time does not exceed 50% of the value of the structure. For a substantial improvement threshold lower than 50%, LSI has the effect of requiring more structures to come into compliance if the owners want to improve them or if they are damaged. For protecting facilities that are critical to the community, PCF credit is provided for regulations that either prohibit critical facilities or set higher standards for protecting them from flood damage. For prohibiting first floor enclosures, ENL credits regulatory standards that prohibit the enclosure of the building's area that lies below the base flood elevation. Building code credit is available for adopting and enforcing the International Code Series. Local drainage protection credit is available for ensuring that new buildings are protected from shallow flooding. For removing the elevation exemption from manufactured homes placed in existing manufactured home parks, credits can be earned. Credits are available for special flood-related hazards regulations, for enforcing appropriate construction standards in areas subject to the special flood-related hazard. Other higher standard credits are available for other regulation. State-mandated regulatory standards credits are available if the regulatory standard is required by the state, and regulations administration credits are earned for having trained staff and administrative procedures that meet specific standards. The purpose of the flood data maintenance activity is to make community floodplain data more accessible, current, useful, and accurate so that the information contributes to the improvement of local regulations, insurance rating, planning, disclosure, and property appraisals. Additional map data credits digital or other systems that improve access, quality, or ease of updating flood and firm data. 3 different types of flood data maintenance systems are usually eligible for credit. A GIS, computer-aided design, CAD, or other digitized system that updates information electronically and can display or print a current map. A database management program for parcel records that maintains the appropriate flood data for each property. Map overlays, such as overlaying the special flood hazard area on a zoning map, aerial photograph, or more detailed street map, or using clear plastic sheets over the firm to record map changes. Having old firms on hand can help with tracking substantial improvement requirements and compliance. Benchmark maintenance credits a program that maintains benchmarks so surveyors can find them and can depend on them to be accurate. Benchmarks maintenance credits a program that maintains a network of stations that support GPS surveying. Accurate benchmarks are critical to surveyors when they are completing elevation certificates or performing land surveys before a new structure is built. The National Spatial Reference System, NSRS, is maintained by the National Geodetic Survey, NGS, in the U.S. Department of Commerce. It is a compendium of vertical and horizontal benchmarks for the country. The purpose of the stormwater management activity is to prevent future development from increasing flood hazards to existing development and to maintain and improve water quality. When unmanaged, stormwater runoff from new development through a watershed can affect floodplains by causing more frequent flooding, greater flood depths, and longer-lasting floods. As forests, fields, and farms are covered by impermeable surfaces, such as streets, rooftops, and parking lots, more of the rain runs off, and it runs off at a faster rate. When an area is urbanized, the rate of runoff and the volume of runoff can increase fivefold or more. CRS provides stormwater management regulations credits for regulating development on a case-by-case basis to ensure that the peak flow of stormwater runoff from each site will not exceed the pre-development runoff. Stormwater management regulation credit is the sum of 4 sub-elements: the size of development regulated, design storms used in regulations, low impact development, and public maintenance of required facilities. Watershed master plan credits are available if development occurs according to a watershed management master plan. WMP is the total of 8 sub-elements. Erosion and sedimentation control regulation credits are available if there are regulations in place to minimize erosion from land disturbed due to construction or farming. Water quality regulations points are available for regulations that improve the quality of stormwater runoff. This concludes our Community Rating System 400 series learning module. For more information, please view our other learning modules or consult the Risk Communication Specialist at the Kentucky Division of Water.